The rattlesnake's warning came too late for Dahlia Foster to avoid stumbling. She fell hard against the red rock, dust billowing around her skirts as the Arizona sun beat down mercilessly. Her canteen, nearly empty anyway, rolled away toward the edge of the narrow trail. This wasn't how she had imagined her journey west would end, stranded on a treacherous mountain path with night approaching and bandits somewhere behind her. "Don't move another inch, miss," a deep voice commanded from above. Dahlia froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. Slowly, she raised her gaze to meet the hard stare of a man on horseback. He sat tall in the saddle, silhouetted against the burning sky, his face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. The Winchester rifle in his grip was pointed steadily in her direction. "I don't have anything worth taking," she said, her voice surprisingly steady despite her fear. "They've already taken it all." The man shifted, and for a moment, the dying sunlight caught his features' sharp jawline, several days' growth of beard, and eyes the color of a summer storm. "Who's taken what?" he asked, his voice losing some of its edge. "Barton's gang. They robbed the stagecoach I was traveling on, killed the driver." Dahlia swallowed hard, the memory still fresh and raw. Been running since yesterday morning." The man studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment before lowering his rifle. "Barton, you say?" He clicked his tongue, and his horse moved forward cautiously on the narrow path. "That explains why you're headed straight into a dead end." This ridge trail narrows to a breadth about 50 yards ahead, drop of 300 feet on both sides. Dahlia felt a wave of despair wash over her. "There's no way through," not for someone who doesn't know these mountains. He glanced behind him, then back at her. "How far back are they?" "I don't know, I haven't seen them since dawn, but I heard shots maybe an hour ago," he nodded grimly. "Up on your feet then. Ridge trail narrows to a breadth and we've got no time to waste. Hands to the wall, I'll lead the reins." "What?" Dahlia blinked at him. "The cliff wall," he clarified, dismounting with fluid grace. "Keep your hands against it as we go. One wrong step and you'll be feeding the vultures by sunrise." He gathered the reins of his horse, a magnificent chestnut stallion that somehow managed to look graceful even on the precarious trail. "Who are you?" Dahlia asked, gathering her torn skirts as she stood. "Name's Samuel Zachary. Most folks call me Sam." He reached down and retrieved her canteen, handing it back to her. "And you're standing in the middle of the most dangerous trail in the Superstition Mountains with Barton's gang on your heels, so I suggest you start moving, miss." "Foster, Dahlia Foster." "Well, Miss Foster, unless you fancy becoming acquainted with the bottom of that gorge or meeting Barton again, I suggest you do exactly as I say." The sun was rapidly descending, painting the rocks in deep shades of crimson and purple. Dahlia cast one nervous glance behind her before facing the imposing cowboy. "Lead the way, Mr. Zachary." Sam nodded and started forward, guiding his horse with one hand while keeping the other near his holstered Colt. Dahlia pressed her palms against the rough stone wall, feeling its residual heat from the day's sun. The path, already narrow, seemed to constrict with every step they took. "Where are you from, Miss Foster?" Sam asked, his voice low. "Your accent isn't local." "Boston," Dahlia replied, trying not to look at the dizzying drop to her right. "I was traveling to Tucson to take a teaching position." Sam made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Long way from Boston." "Yes, well, her foot slipped on loose gravel and she gasped, pressing herself harder against the wall. In an instant, Sam's hand was on her arm, steadying her. "Easy," he murmured. "Small steps, heel to toe." His touch was firm but gentle, and despite the danger surrounding them, Dahlia felt a curious flutter in her chest. She'd been alone for so long on this journey, facing challenges she'd never imagined in her sheltered Eastern life. This man, this cowboy with the storm cloud eyes, was the first person who'd shown her any kindness in days. "Thank you," she whispered, regaining her balance. Sam nodded and released her arm. "We need to keep moving. There's a cave about a quarter-mile ahead where we can shelter for the night." Barton and his men won't attempt this trail in the dark if they've got any sense. They continued in silence, the only sounds the soft clink of the horse's tack and the occasional shower of pebbles cascading into the abyss below. The sky darkened rapidly, stars appearing like silver pinpricks in the vast expanse above. "Almost there," Sam said after what felt like hours. "The worst part's coming up, trails barely wide enough for a mountain goat." He wasn't exaggerating. The path ahead narrowed to perhaps 18 inches with nothing but air on the right side. Dahlia felt her chest tighten with fear. "I'll go first with the horse," Sam said, studying her pale face. "You wait until we're across, then follow exactly where I stepped. Don't look down." Dahlia nodded, not trusting her voice. She watched as Sam expertly guided his stallion along the treacherous stretch, speaking in low, soothing tones to the animal. The horse's hooves seemed impossibly large for the narrow ledge, yet it moved with surprising delicacy, placing each hoof with precision. Once they'd reached a slightly wider section, Sam turned. "Your turn, Miss Foster. Hands to the wall, eyes on me." Taking a deep breath, Dahlia began the crossing. Her fingers scraped against the rough stone as she inched forward, her whole body trembling with the effort not to look at the yawning darkness below. "That's it," Sam encouraged. "You're doing fine." She was halfway across when she heard it, the distant sound of voices carried on the night wind. Her head jerked up in alarm. "Keep moving," Sam urged, his voice tense. "They're still a ways off." Dahlia forced herself to continue, fighting the panic that threatened to overwhelm her. 3 more steps, 2 more, 1. And then Sam's strong hands were grasping her waist, lifting her the last few inches to safety. For a moment, they stood close enough that she could feel the warmth of his breath on her face, smell the leather and pine scent of him. Then he stepped back, all business again. "Cave's just around this bend, we'll be out of sight there." The cave was more of a deep recess in the cliff face, but it offered protection from the elements and, more importantly, concealment from anyone on the trail. Sam led his horse inside and began unloading his saddlebags. "Sit," he instructed, spreading a bedroll on the sandy floor. "You look about ready to collapse." Dahlia didn't argue. Her legs felt like water and her hands were raw from clutching the rock face. She sank onto the offered blanket, watching as Sam efficiently set up their makeshift camp. He worked in the dark, seemingly able to see by some sixth sense. "Are you always this prepared?" she asked as he pulled dried meat, hardtack, and a small canteen from his bags. "Out here, being unprepared means being dead." He struck a match, lighting a small, carefully shielded candle. In its glow, his features seemed softer somehow, less severe. "Eat something. We've got a long day ahead tomorrow." Dahlia accepted the offered food gratefully. She hadn't eaten since her meager breakfast of the stale bread she'd grabbed during her escape. As she chewed the tough jerky, she studied her unexpected rescuer. He was younger than she'd first thought, probably no more than 30. His clothes were dusty but well-maintained: a chambray shirt, leather vest, and denim pants tucked into scuffed boots. The gun belt around his hips looked worn from use rather than for show, and the knife sheathed at his ankle suggested a man accustomed to danger. "Why are you helping me, Mr. Zachary?" she asked finally. Sam paused in the act of checking his rifle. "Would you prefer I didn't?" "No, of course not. It's just, you could have ridden past, left me to my fate." He was quiet for so long that Dahlia thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, 5 years ago, my sister was traveling on a stagecoach that got robbed. No one helped her." The implication hung in the air between them. "I'm sorry," Dahlia whispered. Sam nodded once, acknowledging her sympathy without inviting more questions. "Get some rest, Miss Foster." "I'll keep watch." "Dahlia," she said. "Please call me Dahlia." Something like a smile touched his lips. "Dahlia, then. Sleep. Tomorrow will come soon enough." Despite her exhaustion, sleep eluded Dahlia for a long time. She lay watching the small candle flame cast dancing shadows on the cave walls, acutely aware of the silent, vigilant man sitting at the entrance. Outside, the night creatures called to one another, and occasionally she imagined she could hear voices on the wind, though whether real or phantoms of her frightened mind, she couldn't tell. When sleep finally claimed her, she dreamed of falling, of hands reaching for her too late, of a faceless man with storm cloud eyes calling a name she couldn't quite hear. She awoke to the gentle touch of a hand on her shoulder and the scent of coffee in the air. Sam was crouched beside her, his expression unreadable in the pale light of dawn. "Time to move," he said quietly. They're on the trail. Fear jolted through Dahlia, clearing the last remnants of sleep from her mind. How close? Maybe an hour behind. They made camp for the night down in the valley. He handed her a tin cup of steaming coffee. Drink this, then we need to go. The coffee was strong and bitter, but it warmed her from the inside out. As she drank, Sam efficiently packed up their small camp, erasing all signs of their presence. "Where are we going?" Dahlia asked, returning the empty cup. "You said this trail was a dead end. For most people it is." Sam secured the last of his gear to his horse. "But I know a way through. It's not easy, but it'll take us to Whisper Canyon. My ranch is there." "Your ranch?" "The double Z, nothing fancy, but it's mine." There was quiet pride in his voice. "From there, we can get you safely to Tucson." The thought of continuing her journey to an unknown town filled Dahlia with unexpected disappointment. In the space of one terrifying day and night, Samuel Zachary had become her only certainty in this wild, unfamiliar land. "Thank you," she said, trying to mask her conflicted emotions. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." "Stay alive," Sam replied simply. "That'll be payment enough." They set out as the first rays of sun touched the eastern horizon. The trail was still treacherous, but somehow less terrifying in the light of day. Sam led the way, occasionally reaching back to offer Dahlia a steadying hand when the path grew particularly challenging. His horse, which he called Chief, followed behind them with the patient demeanor of an animal accustomed to difficult terrain. "How much farther to this secret path of yours?" Dahlia asked after they'd been walking for nearly an hour. "Not far now," Sam replied, his eyes constantly scanning the trail both ahead and behind. "See that split in the rock face? That's where we're headed." Dahlia followed his pointing finger to what appeared to be a narrow fissure in the cliff wall ahead. "We're going through there." "It's wider than it looks from here. The Apaches have used it for generations to move between these valleys. Most white folks don't know it exists." "How do you know about it?" A shadow passed over Sam's face. "Let's just say I've had cause to be grateful for Apache knowledge more than once." Before Dahlia could question him further, a sound split the morning air, the unmistakable crack of a rifle shot, followed by the whine of a bullet ricocheting off stone nearby. "Down," Sam commanded, yanking Dahlia against the cliff face and shielding her with his body. Chief snorted in alarm but held his ground, trained not to panic at gunfire. Another shot rang out, closer this time. Dahlia could feel Sam's heart hammering against her own, his breath warm on her cheek. "When I say run, you run for that fissure," he murmured, his lips close to her ear. "Don't stop for anything, I'll be right behind you. But no arguments, I can hold them off, but I need to know you're safe first." The intensity in his gray eyes brooked no disagreement. Dahlia nodded, her mouth dry with fear. Sam eased away from her, drawing his Colt. "Ready." She gathered her torn skirts in one hand. "Ready. Run." Dahlia bolted forward, her feet finding purchase on the rocky trail as if by instinct. Behind her, she heard the thunderous report of Sam's revolver, answered by more rifle fire from their pursuers. The distance to the fissure seemed impossibly long, each step an eternity. A bullet struck the rock near her head, showering her with stone fragments. She cried out but didn't stop, driven by the desperate need to reach safety. The fissure loomed larger, a dark gash in the red stone. 10 more steps, 5, 3. And then she was there, plunging into the narrow passage, its cool shadows enveloping her like a protective cloak. She turned, heart in her throat, to see Sam backing toward her, firing methodically at unseen targets. Chief followed close behind him, miraculously untouched by the flying bullets. "Sam," she called, fear making her voice crack. He glanced back, his face taut with concentration. "Stay there," one final shot, and then he was sprinting the last few yards, Chief at his heels. As they reached the entrance to the fissure, a bullet struck the stone arch above, sending down a shower of rubble that nearly blocked the passage. Sam staggered through just as the last of the rocks fell, dust billowing around them in a choking cloud. In the sudden dimness, Dahlia could just make out a dark stain spreading on his left sleeve. "You're hurt," she gasped, reaching for him. "It's nothing," he grunted, though his face was pale beneath its tan. "Barely a graze." "Let me see," she insisted, her teaching instincts taking over. Without waiting for permission, she pushed up his sleeve, revealing a bloody furrow across his upper arm. "This needs to be cleaned and bandaged." "Later," Sam said, though he didn't pull away from her touch. "We need to put more distance between us and them first. They won't be able to follow through here, the entrance is too blocked now, but they might try to circle around." Dahlia reluctantly conceded the point. "At least let me tie something around it to stop the bleeding." Sam nodded, and she quickly tore a strip from her petticoat, binding it tightly around his arm. His skin was warm beneath her fingers, the muscle firm and unyielding. "Thank you," he said quietly when she'd finished. Their eyes met in the shadowed passage, and something unspoken passed between them, a recognition, perhaps, that they had crossed some invisible boundary from strangers to something more. The moment was broken by Chief's impatient snort. Sam cleared his throat and turned away, taking the horse's reins. "This way," he said, leading them deeper into the fissure. "Watch your step, it gets narrow in places." The passage twisted through the heart of the mountain, sometimes so tight that they had to turn sideways to squeeze through, other times opening into small caverns where ancient pictographs adorned the walls. Shafts of sunlight penetrated through cracks in the ceiling, providing just enough illumination to navigate by. "How did you discover this place?" Dahlia asked, her voice hushed in the cathedral-like space. "I didn't discover it," Sam replied. "It was shown to me." He hesitated, then added, "After the war, the one between the states, I was lost. Ended up in Apache territory, half dead from a bullet wound and fever. By all rights, they should have finished me off. Instead, an old medicine man named Nayland took me in, healed me, taught me their ways." Dahlia was silent, sensing there was more to the story. "When I was well enough, I wanted to repay them somehow," Sam continued. "Turned out there was a group of soldiers harassing their hunting parties, stealing their kills. The soldiers weren't officially army, just men with uniforms and guns who thought they could take what they wanted." His voice hardened. "I dealt with them. Afterward, Nayland showed me this passage, said it might come in handy someday if I ever needed to disappear." "And did you need to disappear?" Sam glanced back at her, a hint of wry humor in his eyes. "More times than I care to count. The West isn't always kind to men who don't fit neatly into one world or another." They walked in contemplative silence for a while, the only sounds their footsteps and the occasional drip of water from the stone ceiling. Dahlia found herself studying Sam's broad shoulders, the confident way he moved through the challenging terrain. He was unlike any man she'd met in Boston, unrefined perhaps, but with an integrity and directness that she found refreshing. "What about you?" Sam asked suddenly. "What brings a Boston schoolteacher all the way to Arizona territory? Couldn't find a school closer to home." Dahlia's smile was rueful. "It wasn't entirely by choice. My father passed away last year, leaving significant debts. Our house was sold to pay his creditors, and I found myself with few options. The teaching position in Tucson was one of the only ones that would accept an unmarried woman with no connections." "I'm sorry about your father," Sam said, his voice gentler than she'd heard it before. "Thank you. He was a good man, just not very practical when it came to financial matters." She stepped carefully over a fallen rock. "After he died, I discovered he'd been borrowing money for years, trying to maintain our lifestyle after my mother passed. By the end, there was nothing left. So you decided to start fresh in the territory. It seemed like the best option at the time. Though I'll admit, I had no idea what I was getting myself into." Dahlia laughed softly, the sound echoing in the stone passage. "My knowledge of the West comes entirely from dime novels and newspaper accounts. Those don't exactly prepare you for the reality," Sam observed. "No," Dahlia agreed. "They neglect to mention the heat, the dust, the danger." She paused, "or the kindness of strangers who risk their lives to save foolish Easterners from their own ignorance." Sam's expression softened. "You're being too hard on yourself. Plenty of folks born out here wouldn't have survived what you've been through in the past 2 days." Before Dahlia could respond, the passage widened suddenly, opening into a breathtaking sight. They stood at the threshold of a vast, hidden valley, rimmed by towering red cliffs and carpeted with lush green grass. A stream meandered through its center, flashing silver in the midday sun. In the distance, A small herd of wild horses grazed peacefully. "Whisper Canyon," Sam said, a note of pride in his voice. "Named for the way the wind sounds as it moves through these rocks. My land starts at the far end, beyond that stand of cottonwoods." Dahlia stood transfixed, drinking in the unexpected beauty. After the harshness of the desert and the terror of the past days, the verdant valley seemed like something from a dream. "It's magnificent," she breathed. "It is," Sam agreed, his eyes on her face rather than the landscape. "Come on, we should reach the ranch by nightfall if we keep a steady pace." They descended into the valley via a steep but navigable path. Once on level ground, Sam helped Dahlia mount Chief, then swung up behind her. The solid warmth of his chest against her back and his arms around her waist as he held the reins made her acutely aware of him in a way that sent her pulse racing. They rode in companionable silence, the rhythm of the horse's gait lulling Dahlia into a state of calm she hadn't felt since leaving Boston. The canyon was alive with the sounds of birds and insects, the occasional splash of fish in the stream, and the constant whisper of the wind that gave the place its name. "Tell me about your ranch," she said after a while, genuinely curious about this man and the life he'd carved out in this wild country. "Not much to tell," Sam replied, though she could hear the smile in his voice. "Started with 20 acres and a broken-down cabin 5 years ago. Now I've got 500 acres, a decent house, and about 300 head of cattle. It's not the biggest spread in the territory, but it's good land." "Do you live there alone?" "Got a ranch hand named Diego who helps with the cattle. And his wife Maria keeps house when she's not busy with their 3 kids." There was genuine affection in his tone when he spoke of them. "They've got a cabin on the property. Good people." "They sound like family," Dahlia observed. "They are, in all the ways that matter." The sun was beginning its descent toward the western rim of the canyon when Sam pointed to a plume of smoke rising in the distance. "Home," he said simply. As they drew nearer, Dahlia could make out a well-built ranch house of squared logs with a wide porch running its length. Several outbuildings stood nearby, and a corral held half a dozen horses. A small garden plot flourished beside the house, and chickens scratched in the yard. It was modest compared to the homes she'd known in Boston, but there was something deeply appealing about its sturdy practicality and the evident care that had gone into its creation. This was a place built to last, to withstand both the elements and the passage of time. A woman emerged from the house as they approached, wiping her hands on her apron. She was small and compact, with glossy black hair pulled back in a neat bun, her olive-skinned face lighting up with a smile of welcome that turned to concern as they drew closer. "Dios mío. Samuel, what has happened?" She hurried forward as Sam dismounted, then carefully helped Dahlia down. "You are injured, and this poor señorita looks ready to fall over." "We're all right, Maria," Sam assured her. "But we could use some of your good cooking and maybe a bit of that medicinal tequila Diego keeps hidden in the barn." Maria tusked disapprovingly, but her dark eyes were warm with affection. "Always jokes with you. Come inside. Diego has gone to town for supplies but will return by morning." She ushered them toward the house, clucking sympathetically at Dahlia's torn dress and scratched hands. The interior of the ranch house was simple but comfortable, with solid furniture, colorful woven rugs, and shelves lined with books more than Dahlia would have expected. A fire burned cheerfully in the stone hearth despite the warmth of the day, a pot of something that smelled delicious simmering above it. Sit," Maria insisted, pushing Dahlia gently into a cushioned chair. "I will bring water for washing and then food. You must be starving, poor thing." As Maria bustled away, Dahlia looked around with growing admiration. Through an open door, she glimpsed a tidy kitchen with copper pots hanging from the ceiling and bunches of herbs drying along the walls. Another door presumably led to bedrooms. The main room they sat in served as both dining area and parlor, dominated by a large oak table that looked like it could seat 8 comfortably. "Your home is lovely," she said sincerely. Sam looked pleased. "Built most of it myself. The original cabin was just this front room. Added on as I could afford to." He rolled up his sleeve, examining the makeshift bandage Dahlia had applied earlier. It was stained with blood, but the bleeding had stopped. Maria returned with a basin of water, clean cloths, and a small bottle. "For the pain," she explained, setting the bottle beside Sam. She eyed Dahlia critically. "You will want to clean up, yes. I can find you something to wear while we wash your dress." "That would be wonderful," Dahlia admitted, "though I don't want to be any trouble." "No trouble," Maria assured her. "Samuel rarely brings guests, especially such pretty ones." Her eyes twinkled mischievously, making Sam shift uncomfortably. "Maria," he said in a warning tone, but the older woman just laughed. "Come, Señorita Foster, I will show you where you can wash up." Maria led Dahlia to a small bedroom at the back of the house. It was simply furnished with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a washstand with a mirror above it. A window looked out over the corral and the mountains beyond. "This is Samuel's room," Maria explained, pulling a clean shirt and a pair of trousers from the chest. "You can wear these until your clothes are clean. The pants will be too big, but there is a belt. I would offer my clothes, but—" She gestured to her much smaller frame with a smile. "Thank you," Dahlia said, touched by the woman's kindness. "Are you sure Mr. Zachary won't mind me using his room?" "Samuel," Maria waved dismissively. "He can sleep in the bunkhouse for one night. Besides, he is the one who brought you here, no. He would not leave a lady without proper accommodations." After Maria left, Dahlia sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion and the events of the past 2 days. The room smelled faintly of leather, pine, and something uniquely masculine that she recognized as Sam's scent. It was oddly comforting. She washed quickly, wincing at the numerous scrapes and bruises revealed as she removed her torn clothing. Sam's shirt was soft with washing and hung nearly to her knees. The trousers were indeed too large, but the belt cinched them securely around her waist. It was the most improper outfit she'd ever worn, and yet she couldn't help but smile at her reflection in the mirror. Her mother would be scandalized. When she returned to the main room, she found Sam seated at the table, his wounded arm freshly bandaged. He looked up as she entered, and something flashed in his eyes: surprise, followed quickly by admiration before he masked his expression. "Hope you don't mind," she said, gesturing to the borrowed clothes. Maria insisted. "They suit you," Sam replied, his voice a touch gruffer than usual. "Better than they do me, at any rate." Maria emerged from the kitchen, carrying a steaming pot. "Ah, good, now we eat, and then you can tell me how Samuel rescued you. He never tells me about his adventures." Over a hearty meal of beef stew, fresh bread, and sweet preserves, Dahlia recounted the stagecoach robbery and her flight into the mountains. Sam added details about their narrow escape through the ridge trail and the hidden passage, though he downplayed his own role in their survival. "So Barton is back in these parts," Maria said, her expression troubled. "Diego must be told to keep watch. Those men are animals." "They won't find this place," Sam assured her, "not through Whisper Canyon, and they'll assume we headed for Tucson, not deeper into the mountains." "Still, better to be careful." Maria began clearing the dishes. "Now, you both need rest. It has been a long day." Despite Dahlia's protests, Sam insisted she take his room while he would sleep in the bunkhouse with the ranch hands. Maria shooed him out with instructions to check on the livestock before turning in, then led Dahlia back to the bedroom. "There are extra blankets in the chest if you get cold," she said, lighting a small lamp on the bedside table. "And do not worry about waking early. You need sleep." "Thank you, Maria," Dahlia said sincerely, "for everything." The older woman patted her hand. "Samuel is a good man, the best I know, but he is alone too much, I think. It is nice to see him bring someone home, even if by accident." With that cryptic comment, she left, closing the door softly behind her. Alone in Sam's room, Dahlia found herself studying the few personal items scattered about a carved wooden horse on the windowsill, a book of poetry dog-eared and well-read on the bedside table, a silver pocket watch hanging from a hook near the mirror. Small glimpses into the man who had saved her life. She slipped beneath the quilt, expecting to lie awake with thoughts of danger and uncertainty, but exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. Her last conscious thought was of storm-cloud eyes and the gentle strength of hands that had kept her from falling. Dahlia woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the distant sound of hammering. For a moment, she was disoriented, the unfamiliar room confusing her still drowsy mind. Then memory flooded back the narrow trail, the gunfire, Sam's steady presence guiding her to safety. She rose and dressed quickly in her own clothes, which someone, Maria, presumably had washed, mended, and left folded on the chest. They still bore the signs of her ordeal, but they were clean and wearable. Following the sound of voices, Dahlia found Maria in the kitchen, kneading bread dough on a floured board. "Buenos dias," Maria greeted her cheerfully. "Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in weeks," Dahlia admitted. "Thank you for mending my dress." "It was nothing. Are you hungry? There is coffee and eggs." After a hearty breakfast, Dahlia asked, "Where is Mr. Zachary? I heard hammering." "Samuel is fixing the chicken coop. Something got in last night, a fox maybe, and took 2 hens." Maria shook her head disapprovingly. "He says he will take you to Tucson tomorrow, so today you must rest and regain your strength." Tucson, the teaching position. In the chaos of the past days, Dahlia had almost forgotten the purpose of her journey. Strangely, the prospect no longer filled her with the same anticipation it once had. "I should thank him," she said, rising from the table, "for everything he's done." Maria's smile was knowing. "You will find him behind the house, near the large oak tree." Dahlia found Sam exactly where Maria had indicated, hammering new slats into place on a chicken coop. He worked with focused precision, his movements economical and practiced. He'd removed his shirt in the morning heat, and Dahlia paused, momentarily transfixed by the play of muscles across his tanned back. He must have sensed her presence because he turned, wiping sweat from his brow with his forearm. "Morning," he said, reaching for his shirt and pulling it on with a wince as the movement pulled at his wounded arm. "Sleep all right?" "Yes, thank you." Dahlia moved closer, trying not to show how his half-dressed state had affected her. "Maria says you're planning to take me to Tucson tomorrow." Sam nodded, setting down his hammer. "Figured you'd want to get to your teaching position as soon as possible. Term must be starting soon." "It is," Dahlia confirmed, though with less enthusiasm than she might have expected. I wanted to thank you properly for saving my life. I wouldn't have survived out there without your help." "Anyone would have done the same," Sam said, looking uncomfortable with her gratitude. "No," Dahlia disagreed firmly. "Anyone would not have. Most would have ridden past or worse, taken advantage of a woman alone in the wilderness." She met his gaze directly. "You're a good man, Samuel Zachary. I won't forget what you've done for me." Something shifted in Sam's expression, a softening around his eyes. "You handled yourself well out there. Most city folk would have fallen apart." "I nearly did," she admitted with a small laugh. "But you didn't," he countered. "That counts for something out here." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant lowing of cattle and the rustle of wind through the cottonwood leaves. Dahlia found herself reluctant to end this moment, to return to the reality of her plans and obligations. "Would you show me your ranch?" she asked impulsively. "Since I'll be leaving tomorrow, I'd like to see what you've built here." Sam looked surprised but pleased. "Sure. Let me just finish this up, and I'll give you the grand tour. Not that it'll compare to what you're used to in Boston." "I think I prefer it to Boston already," Dahlia said softly, and was rewarded with a rare, genuine smile that transformed Sam's rugged features and sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. The rest of the day passed in a pleasant haze as Sam showed her around the Double Z. They rode out to check on the cattle, a sea of red and brown backs grazing contentedly in the lush valley. Sam spoke with quiet pride about his breeding program, his plans for expanding the herd, the challenges and rewards of ranching in the territory. They stopped for lunch beside the stream that bisected his property, sharing bread, cheese, and dried fruit under the shade of an ancient cottonwood. Dahlia found herself laughing more than she had in months as Sam recounted stories of his early, disastrous attempts at ranching. "First winter I nearly froze to death because I'd built the cabin all wrong," he admitted. "Diego found me half buried in snow inside my own house when the roof collapsed. Never let me forget it, either." "Where did you learn to build properly?" Dahlia asked, genuinely curious. "Books, mostly." Sam gestured vaguely back toward the house. "I order them from back east. Figured if I was going to do something, I should learn to do it right." "Is that why you have so many books? I noticed your shelves are quite full." A hint of color touched Sam's cheekbones. "Reading's a habit I picked up during the war, lot of waiting around between the fighting. Got so I couldn't sleep without reading a bit first." "What do you like to read?" Dahlia leaned back against the tree trunk, genuinely interested in his answer. "History, poetry sometimes." He glanced at her as if gauging her reaction. "Shakespeare when I can get my hands on it." "Shakespeare?" Dahlia couldn't hide her surprise. "Which plays?" "The tragedies, mostly, though The Tempest has its moments." He cleared his throat, looking slightly embarrassed. "What about you?" "What does a Boston schoolteacher read for pleasure?" They spent the next hour discussing books, discovering a shared appreciation for Dickens and divergent opinions on the merits of American versus British authors. Dahlia found herself increasingly drawn to this complex man who could quote Shakespeare one moment and track game through the wilderness the next. As the afternoon waned, they rode back toward the ranch house, taking a route that climbed a gentle rise overlooking the entire valley. Sam reigned in chief at the crest, and they sat in companionable silence, watching the setting sun paint the landscape in shades of gold and crimson. "It's beautiful," Dahlia said softly. "You've built something wonderful here." "It's a good life," Sam agreed. "Hard sometimes, but good." He hesitated, then added in a lower voice, "Gets lonely, though." Dahlia turned to look at him, struck by the uncharacteristic vulnerability in his admission. Their eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them, suspended in time on this hilltop as the day faded around them. Sam looked away first, clearing his throat. "We should head back. Maria will have supper waiting." The spell broken, Dahlia nodded, trying to ignore the pang of disappointment that flared in her chest. They rode back to the ranch in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Supper that evening was a lively affair. Diego had returned from town with supplies and news of a dance to be held in Whisper Valley Settlement the following weekend. Maria immediately began planning what she would cook for the potluck, while Diego regaled them with gossip from town. "Sheriff says they caught two of Barton's men trying to sell stolen watches in the saloon," he reported, accepting a second helping of Maria's chicken and dumplings. Dumb as rocks, those two still had the stagecoach company's strongbox with them. Sam's eyes flickered to Dahlia. "What about Barton himself?" Diego shook his head. "No sign. Sheriff figures he's headed for Mexico with whatever cash they got. Said there wasn't much in the strongbox, mostly mail and some mining company documents." Dahlia felt a curious mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief that the immediate danger might be past. Disappointment that her adventure and her time with Sam was drawing to a close. After dinner, as Maria and Diego cleared the dishes, Sam excused himself to check on the horses one last time before turning in. Impulsively, Dahlia followed him out to the barn. The interior was warm and fragrant with the smell of hay and leather. Lantern light cast a golden glow over the stalls where several horses dozed or munched contentedly. Sam moved down the row, checking water buckets and speaking softly to each animal in turn. "Need something?" he asked without turning, somehow sensing her presence. "No, I just—" Dahlia trailed off, suddenly unsure why she'd followed him. "I wanted to ask about tomorrow." "What time will we leave for Tucson?" Sam turned to face her, his expression unreadable in the shadowy barn. "Early, if that suits you. It's a long ride, but we should make it by nightfall if we push." Dahlia nodded, trying to ignore the heaviness that settled in her chest at the thought of reaching her destination. "That's fine. I should probably get to the school as soon as possible." "Right." Sam busied himself adjusting a bridle hanging on the wall. "I'm sure they're expecting you." An awkward silence fell between them, filled with unspoken words and half-formed thoughts. Dahlia took a step closer, drawn by some indefinable pull. "Sam," she began, not sure what she wanted to say but needing to say something. He looked up, and in his eyes she saw the same confusion and yearning that churned within her own heart. "Dahlia," he responded, her name a question and an answer all at once. A horse nickered softly from a nearby stall, breaking the moment. Sam straightened, his expression closing off. "You should get some rest. Long day tomorrow." Dahlia nodded, disappointment a bitter taste in her mouth. "Good night, then," she said, turning to leave. Dahlia, Sam called when she reached the barn door. She looked back to find him watching her, conflict evident in the set of his shoulders. "I'm glad you're all right, that I found you on that trail." It wasn't what she wanted to hear, but it was something. She smiled softly. "So am I, Sam, so am I." She returned to the house, her thoughts in turmoil. The teaching position in Tucson had been her lifeline, her chance at independence after losing everything in Boston. Yet in the space of 2 days, her priorities had shifted in ways she couldn't have anticipated. The thought of saying goodbye to Sam, to this place that already felt more like home than anywhere she'd been since her parents died, left an ache in her chest that no amount of reasoning could dispel. Sleep eluded her long into the night as she wrestled with her conflicting desires and obligations. By the time dawn painted the eastern sky with pale fingers of light, Dahlia had come to a decision. She rose and dressed quickly, packing her few belongings into the small carpet bag that had survived the stagecoach robbery. In the kitchen, she found Maria already at work kneading dough for the day's bread. "Buenos dias," the older woman greeted her cheerfully. "You are up early. Samuel is checking the trail ahead. He will be back soon to breakfast before you leave." "Actually, Maria," Dahlia began hesitantly, "I was hoping to speak with you about something." Maria wiped her hands on her apron, giving Dahlia her full attention. "Of course, Querida, what troubles you?" "It's not trouble exactly." Dahlia took a deep breath. "I'm wondering if there might be need for a teacher here in Whisper Valley." Maria's eyes widened, then crinkled with delight. "A teacher? Here?" She clasped her flour-dusted hands together. "The settlement has grown much in the last year, many families with children. They must ride all the way to Tucson for schooling now, which is too far for the little ones. So there is no school here." "No, no school." Maria's expression grew thoughtful. "The widow Jenkins has spoken of starting one, but she has no teacher." She studied Dahlia's face intently. "You are thinking of staying," Dahlia nodded, a mixture of nervousness and excitement bubbling within her. "If there's a need and if I could find lodging." She trailed off, suddenly uncertain. Maria's smile was knowing. "This is about Samuel, yes." Heat flooded Dahlia's cheeks. "Not entirely," she said honestly. "I came west for a fresh start, and Whisper Valley seems as good a place as any for that, better even than Tucson." "But Samuel is part of your thinking," Maria persisted gently. "Yes," Dahlia admitted, "though I don't know if he—" "That is, if he would want me to stay." Maria's laugh was warm and rich. "Oh, my Querida, you have much to learn about men, especially men like Samuel. He will never ask you to change your plans for him, even if it is what his heart desires most." "Do you really think so?" Dahlia couldn't keep the hope from her voice. "I know so," Maria said firmly. "I have known Samuel for 5 years. Never has he looked at a woman the way he looks at you." She patted Dahlia's hand. "Stay, talk to the widow Jenkins about the school, see what happens." The sound of hoofbeats outside announced Sam's return. Maria winked at Dahlia conspiratorially. "Say nothing of your plans yet. Let me speak to Diego first about the settlement's need for a school, then we will see how Samuel reacts, yes." Breakfast was a subdued affair, with Sam eating quickly and speaking little. His expression was guarded, his manner almost formal compared to the easy companionship of the previous day. Dahlia found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, noting the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers gripped his coffee cup too tightly. "The trail to Tucson is clear," he reported, rising from the table. "No sign of Barton or his men. We should leave within the hour if we want to make town by sunset." "Actually," Maria interjected, casting a sly glance at Dahlia, "Diego and I were just discussing the need for a school in the settlement. With so many new families arriving, the children need proper education." Sam frowned, clearly puzzled by this abrupt change of subject. "I suppose they do," he agreed cautiously. "What does that have to do with us leaving for Tucson?" "Well," Maria continued innocently, "it seems wasteful to take Señorita Foster all the way to Tucson when we need a teacher right here in Whisper Valley. Does it not?" Sam's gaze snapped to Dahlia, surprise and something like hope flaring briefly in his eyes before he mastered his expression. "Dahlia already has a position," he said. "She's expected in Tucson." "Actually," Dahlia said, gathering her courage, "I've been thinking about that. The position in Tucson was arranged by correspondence. They don't know me personally, if there's truly a need here in the valley. There is, Diego confirmed, catching on to his wife's scheme with a barely suppressed grin. Jenkins was just saying last week that his girls need proper schooling, not just what his wife can teach between chores, and the Miller twins are running wild without any education at all. Sam looked between them, his brow furrowed in confusion. You want to stay here in Whisper Valley? Dahlia nodded, her heart pounding. If there's a place for me. She could stay here until proper arrangements are made, Maria suggested helpfully. The settlement council meets next week. They could formally offer her the teaching position then. Sam ran a hand through his hair, looking slightly dazed. Is this what you want, Dahlia, really want? Because Tucson has proper buildings, supplies, civilization. And yet it doesn't have this valley, Dahlia replied softly. Or these people. She held his gaze steadily, letting him see the truth in her eyes. Or you. The kitchen fell silent save for the crackling of the fire and the distant calls of morning birds. Diego cleared his throat awkwardly. Maria, I think we should check on those new calves, he said, taking his wife's arm, right now. But Maria began, then caught her husband's meaningful look. Ah, yes, the calves, very important. She allowed Diego to lead her from the kitchen, throwing an encouraging smile over her shoulder at Dahlia. Alone with Sam, Dahlia waited, her future hanging on his response. You'd stay, he asked finally, his voice low and uncertain. Because of me. Not only because of you, Dahlia answered truthfully, but you're a significant part of the reason, yes. Sam took a step toward her, then another, as if drawn by an invisible thread. You hardly know me. I know enough, Dahlia countered. I know you risked your life for a stranger. I know you've built something beautiful here through hard work and determination. I know you read Shakespeare and can quote Wordsworth from memory when you think no one is listening. Sam's lips quirked in a half smile. You heard that last night when you were checking on your horse. For oft, when on my couch I lie in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils, Sam finished softly. He was standing directly before her now, close enough that she could see the varying shades of gray in his eyes, the tiny scar that bisected his left eyebrow. Dahlia, he said, her name a caress on his lips. I'm not a wealthy man. I can't offer you the kind of life you had in Boston. I don't want that life, she replied simply. I want this one, or at least the chance to see if it suits me. Sam reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she chose, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered against her cheek, warm and slightly calloused. And if it doesn't, if you wake up a month from now regretting your decision, then I'll go to Tucson or back east or wherever the wind takes me, Dahlia said, but I'll go knowing I followed my heart, not just my head. Something shifted in Sam's expression, a barrier falling away to reveal the depth of feeling he'd kept carefully guarded. I've been alone a long time, he said quietly. Got used to it. Then you appeared on that ridge trail and suddenly being alone didn't seem right anymore. Dahlia's heart swelled with joy and trepidation. So, I can stay. Instead of answering with words, Sam leaned forward and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle yet filled with promise. Dahlia's eyes fluttered closed as she returned the kiss, her hands coming up to rest against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her palms. When they finally parted, Sam's smile was like the dawn breaking over the mountains, radiant and full of possibility. You can stay, he confirmed, for as long as you want. That might be a very long time, Mr. Zachary, Dahlia warned, her own smile matching his. I'm counting on it, Miss Foster, Sam replied, drawing her close once more. From the doorway, Maria exchanged a satisfied look with her husband. About time, she whispered. Now maybe he will stop brooding like a thundercloud every winter. Esachich, Diego hushed her, though his own expression was equally pleased. Let them have their moment. The weeks that followed were among the happiest of Dahlia's life. The settlement council, eager to establish a proper school, readily accepted her credentials and offered her the position of schoolteacher for Whisper Valley. A small cabin near the center of the settlement was designated as the schoolhouse, and families throughout the valley pitched in to furnish it with desks, books, and supplies. Dahlia threw herself into preparing for her new role, creating lesson plans and visiting the families of her future students. She stayed at the Double Z, occupying Sam's guest room while Maria watched over their burgeoning courtship with poorly disguised delight. For his part, Sam seemed transformed. The quiet, reserved man who had rescued her on the Ridge Trail was still present, but alongside him emerged a man who laughed more freely, who shared his thoughts and dreams, who looked at the future with renewed hope. Their courtship was conducted under the watchful but approving eyes of the entire valley. Sam accompanied Dahlia to social gatherings at the settlement, where they danced beneath the stars to the music of fiddles and harmonicas. He helped her prepare the schoolhouse, building shelves and a teacher's desk with his own hands. In the evenings, they sat on the porch of the ranch house, reading to each other from his collection of books as the sun set over the mountains. 1 month after her arrival in Whisper Valley, Dahlia opened the schoolhouse doors to 15 eager students ranging in age from 6 to 16. The joy she found in teaching these children, so different from what she had expected in Tucson, confirmed that her impulsive decision to stay had been the right one. As autumn painted the valley in shades of gold and russet, Sam took Dahlia riding to a high meadow overlooking the entire canyon. A picnic was spread on a blanket, and as they ate, Sam spoke of his plans for expanding the ranch, adding sheep to diversify, perhaps building a larger house someday. It would need more rooms, he said casually, studying the horizon rather than meeting her eyes. For a family. Dahlia's heart skipped a beat. A family, if that's something you might want, Sam replied, finally turning to look at her. Someday. With you? Dahlia asked, though she already knew the answer. Sam took her hand, his expression more open and vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. Dahlia Foster, I've loved you since you stood on that ridge trail and faced down danger with more courage than most men I've known. I don't have fancy words or grand gestures, just this land, this life, and a promise to cherish you every day if you'll have me. Tears blurred Dahlia's vision as joy suffused her entire being. Are you asking me to marry you, Samuel Zachary? I am, he confirmed, a hint of anxiety creasing his brow. Though I'll understand if you need time to consider, Dahlia silenced him with a kiss, pouring all her love and certainty into the gesture. When they finally parted, both breathless, she smiled up at him through happy tears. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. Sam's answering smile was brighter than the Arizona sun. From his pocket, he withdrew a small silver ring set with a modest turquoise stone. It was my mother's, he explained, sliding it onto her finger. I've been carrying it since the day you decided to stay. It's beautiful, Dahlia whispered, admiring the way the stone caught the light. Perfect. They were married 2 weeks later in the newly built church at Whisper Valley Settlement. Maria wept openly throughout the ceremony, while Diego pretended the desert dust was affecting his eyes. Dahlia's students attended in their Sunday best, presenting their teacher and her new husband with a handmade quilt as a wedding gift. As they spoke their vows beneath the simple wooden cross, Dahlia thought of the twisted path that had led her to this place, the loss of her parents, the financial ruin, the terrifying stagecoach robbery. What had seemed like disaster had ultimately guided her to greater happiness than she could have imagined in her former life. The celebration afterward lasted well into the night, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed the entire valley twice over. As the evening waned, Sam led Dahlia away from the festivities toward their waiting horses. Where are we going? She asked, laughing as he helped her mount. You'll see, he replied mysteriously, swinging into his own saddle. They rode by moonlight up a familiar trail, eventually reaching the ridge path where they had first met. Sam dismounted and helped Dahlia down, then led her to a spot overlooking the vast, silver-washed landscape below. I wanted to bring you back here, he explained, his arms encircling her waist from behind as they gazed at the breathtaking view. To remind us both how close we came to missing each other entirely, if you'd taken a different trail, if I'd been hunting in another area that day. Dahlia leaned back against his solid warmth. But we didn't miss each other. Some might call it fate, or divine providence, Sam suggested, pressing a kiss to her temple. Either way, I'm grateful. "As am I," Dahlia murmured, turning in his arms to face him. In the moonlight, his features were softened, the habitual guardedness completely absent. This was the face only she was privileged to see the Sam beneath the careful exterior he showed the world. "I love you, Samuel Zachary," she said, reaching up to trace the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "And I promise to remind you of that every day for the rest of our lives." "I'll hold you to that promise, Mrs. Zachary," Sam replied, his voice husky with emotion. Then he kissed her beneath the vast canopy of stars, the same stars that had witnessed their first meeting on this very ridge. As the years passed, the legend of the schoolteacher and the cowboy who found each other on the edge of disaster became a favorite tale in Whisper Valley. The Double Z Ranch prospered, as did the school, which eventually moved from its small cabin to a proper building funded by the growing community. Sam and Dahlia welcomed 2 children, a boy with his father's storm cloud eyes and a girl with her mother's determination and curiosity. They raised them with stories of courage and providence, of narrow trails and the beauty that can be found in the wild places of both the land and the heart. And on each anniversary of their first meeting, Sam would take Dahlia back to that ridge trail, now widened and made safer for travelers, but still breathtaking in its beauty and danger. There, with the vastness of the Arizona sky above them and the valley spread out below, they would remember the words that had brought them together and changed their lives forever. "Ridge trail narrows to a breath," Sam would say, his arms secure around his wife. "Hands to the wall, I'll lead the reins." And Dahlia would smile, thinking of how far they had come from that moment of peril, and how the narrow path had led them not to danger, but to the widest, most beautiful vista of their lives, a life built on love, trust, and the courage to follow one's heart even when the trail ahead seems impossible to navigate. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching their children play beneath the cottonwoods while the sun painted the cliffs of Whisper Canyon in shades of amber and rose. Sam would read aloud from one of their many books, his deep voice carrying on the gentle breeze while Dahlia leaned against his shoulder, content in the knowledge that she had found not just a home, but a place where her soul truly belonged. And sometimes, when the children were asleep and the night was still, they would walk hand in hand under the stars, remembering the dangers they had faced and overcome, grateful for the twist of fate that had brought them together on a narrow ridge trail in the wild heart of the Arizona Territory.